Hello investors and welcome back to Just Random Stocks. Let's talk about Lucid. I want to give you an update. Talked about Lucid yesterday because it got into a buy range. Now there is risk of stocks always going up and down. I thought that this was on the lower side. We could see a high price of $35 by the end of this week. We could see some pullback with the volatility. Are we in a bear market or a bull market? I think we're still in a bear market. And I'll tell you why. The reason that all of these EV plays are linked together is macroeconomics, I believe. So Tesla, really, it was down yesterday or last week in the $800 range, which is low for this play. And it made it back to the $900 range. Now, one other thing I did was I was looking to see, as I noticed last week that these were all moving in sync because of the earnings report that came out saying that supply chain issues were plaguing Tesla. And the assumption would be that the rest of the auto manufacturers are going to have supply chain issues. So if you look at the percentages of change, I mean, you're really wanting to put your money where the highest growth potential is. So whatever stocks have felt the most pain, you can see a lot of them really shot up a little bit higher. But not only that factor, I would say your mix of like Ford Motor Company and General Motors, these businesses that are investing billions to change the EV, really didn't see as many gains, as high of a gain as your EV plays that are just standard EV. They don't have to do any changes to their business model. They are forward looking. This just makes me very bullish on EV plays in the short term. Now, I still believe that there is an auto manufacturing bubble, so make sure you pick a winner. And that's why I'm talking about Lucid. I think it has very strong potential, and obviously it's got some risk because they haven't really kept their word with their projections. So I want to talk about capacity, but before we do that, let's talk about the rest of these macroeconomic indicators real quick. So this week, at the end of this week, White House is already preparing. Put this on your calendar. So it looks like every Friday is when this occurs. So just know that this Friday on February 4th, we're going to get more information on that. It's not going to look good, and Friday could be a red day potentially. So Wells Fargo expects the number actually to be negative. And the next thing I want you to look forward to, and make sure you mark your calendar for this one, February 10th at 8:30. So obviously February 9th, there could be some volatility leading up. Even 2 days prior, we could see, because there's going to be conversations starting around inflation, or I should say continuing around inflation, and inflation is continuing to go higher. So that's why the Fed is being so hawkish. About 5 days ago, the U.S. formally responded to Russia's demands with a response. Looks like we're going to put some sanctions in place. We've activated some troops to be on notice to respond in support of those NATO nations. So it's really up to Russia to pull back from Ukraine. So training missions over there are worrying people, and we'll have to see what happens with that. But I think that's going to be another week or two until we're out of the clear. Now, March 15th and 16th, I know this is out quite a ways. We're talking about a month and a half, but this is when the rate increases are going to happen, if they do happen. Now, the Fed said they wanted to be humble and nimble, so the market doesn't like uncertainty, and that's why we're seeing this uncertainty in the market. Now let's get straight into Lucid. There's a few things that I didn't cover yesterday. I really want to talk about their growth plan, because when you're looking at a stock, you want to make sure that you can visualize and account for the growth that's going to happen. Now, before they go to China and the Middle East by 2025, which most people are fully aware of this, they're going to be in Eastern Europe, and that expansion actually this year. So I believe, and I'm not completely sure, I think they're supposed to be in Berlin, but of course there's going to be storefront locations like they've populated in North America. Now, a little additional information and an interview. If you did not see this, I didn't see a lot of people had viewed this interview, so I thought I would point it out. The chairman of the board, Andrew, he did an interview and was over there in the Middle East and Saudi doing some work. He was at this Future Minerals Forum, and he's got a number of things that he does. But they did name 2 sites that are in consideration. They still haven't ironed out all the details. So, hopefully they'll be able to pull this plan in and not continue to push it out. So if you'd like to see that full interview, this is it. So you can pause the screen, go in there, check it out. You can see it's only got 61 views. That's why I don't think a lot of people have watched that interview. So something good to watch. Now, I want to make sure I disclose that in this next quarterly update that people haven't really been talking about this lately because it most likely isn't a big deal, but you don't know. And I just want everyone aware that there was an SEC probe, and how you find these, you go to Lucid on NASDAQ, go to their SEC filings, and then scroll down to the date it happened. This is December 6th. It happened on December 3rd. They disclosed it on December 6th. But just to give you the language real quick on what happened here is obviously they received a subpoena from the SEC requesting production of certain documents related to an SEC investigation, and it appears that it's between the business combination of Churchill Capital and the previous name of this business now, and certain projections or statements. So say they had a projection of 6,000 vehicles, and that changed to the 5 to 600 that we're expecting to see in Q4. This is what it has to do with. Supposedly, maybe some people lost some money in this. So SEC investigations are pretty common, I would say. They happen to even good companies. And here's an example of one that happened with Tesla, solar panel defects. And this happened actually on the same date that Lucid received theirs, since there's always, you can see December 6th, on or about the same time. And there's always this back and forth between Tesla and Lucid because obviously they are competitors. Now, the last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about capacity planning, because you're going to hear people talking about 20,000 vehicles next year, 500. They've got the capacity to do this. Capacity is important to understand that even though a company has a max capacity, it's very, very unlikely that they ever surpass that capacity because there's inputs into that capacity. So just imagine that you've got 4 lines, and each of those lines has a different task. If one of those lines go down, that could be a machine constraint in the capacity planning model, material constraints, labor constraints. So when they put these capacity planning models together, they can be impacted if they're not done correctly by those constraints. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of that. Let's take a look at the price action. And the price action actually, well, volume first. Price action looked good today. I mean, it looked good across all these, but the volume, I would say, it wasn't that strong. I mean, obviously people know when this is low, and you've seen a lot of trading volume over the previous 2 days last week. I think that was smart. It's important to point that out because I think people were just, more eager at getting in at that $26, maybe even $25 range. I mean, I had this marked at 24 as a buy, and it would be interesting if it got to that mark. Didn't quite get there for me. I'm going to sit back and still be patient, but this is definitely on my watch list. And as far as options, I mean, people are betting that this is going up. There was definitely a lot of volume trade at the options for the $30 play, and you can see that was a 32% gain. Those options can be massive gains. If you were going to make about 10% on your normal shares, you could have made 32% on options. So you can see why that can be enticing to do. Now let's take a look at the price action. So I've actually moved my buy target up to 26.53. If you want to get in low, it looks like that's the point there. But obviously, I had this around the $24 range before. Gonna have to see some pullback if you didn't take advantage of this dip. I would say it's, this could go 35 in the very near short term. According to earnings, you never know how that's going to go. Obviously, I think they're going to beat earnings, but margins could be scrutinized. And even though Tesla did well in earnings, those supply chain issues, which he spoke about in that interview, the supply chain issues were a concern for Lucid. They're going to be facing those supply chain issues also. So maybe not in this short term where they're only trying to do about 600 vehicles. They may be carrying some really high inventory. It looks like a lot of people aren't doing inventory just in time. They are actually building inventory to to avoid those supply chain issues. So another line that we're going to want to watch in that Q4 earnings. This is one I plan on watching a little bit closer now that it's gotten back down to a level where I think it's a good entry. That's all I got. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up. It really helps me out, and I'll see you in the next video.